Welcome back to another edition of the Sal Greco Show. And I'm your host, Sal Greco. So I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah. Of course, I know some people right now that did not have a good Christmas or a good Hanukkah. Many of them that either worked for the New York City Police Department in a leadership role or just were and have recently left in regards to having a leadership role in the New York City Police Department. Also, New York City Mayor Eric Adams. I know he's not, he's definitely, this is all getting under his skin. So when we last left off, we know that there was a huge scandal going on in the New York City Police Department. Pay for play, quid pro quo with, I guess, involving sex for overtime or overtime for sex. A real bad scandal. And I know that we still have a victim to identify that was burnt to a crisp by a, what can we call him? Illegal immigrant, migrant, undocumented, someone who had no business being in the country, which is a total failure by the government and the state because the state legislation has no cash bail and all of that. So I understand that. I would like to get to that issue, but this Chief of Department Jeffrey Maddrey scandal, it just, all the things that have happened is just everything that we've been stating on the Sal Greco Show is starting to become true. And kind of like Roman Reigns states, if you can't debunk me, then you must acknowledge me. So let's go to some of these posts that I was posting on X over the last 48 to 72 hours. And let's roll them out. So let's break this one down. So let's start here. Breaking Christmas news. I look forward to reading about how current NYPD Chief of Department John Schell was initially rejected for NYPD Chief of Patrol by City Hall. So the CRT team was created as a proxy. Jeffrey Maddrey asked Deputy Commissioner of Operations Kaz Daughtry to create a plan to get John Schell promoted to Chief of Patrol as an avenue for Schell's ultimate promotion. That included creating their, quote, podcast, end quote, and other uses of department resources. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show, hashtag the finest unfiltered. So right here, maybe some information in regards to how the CRT team was created. Of course, if you've watched this show, if you watched The Finest Unfiltered, we have said a lot about CRT, Kaz Daughtry and John Schell and the day-to-day operations going on there. And of course, Jeffrey Maddrey. And here they are on screen. There's John Schell. There's Jeffrey Maddrey. There's Kaz Daughtry from left to right. And there's more on Christmas. Christmas breaking news. The video below is interesting. I look forward to reading about how starting the fourth quarter of 2023, NYPD First Deputy Commissioner Tanya Kinsella and then NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Maddrey met in his office and had a discussion about the overtime. Kinsella told Maddrey that she had Lieutenant Leslie A. Traynor cut the budget for the Detective Bureau. This was done specifically for the benefit of the staff of the NYPD Police Commissioner, First Deputy Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Chief of Department, and Chief of Patrol because their staff were depleting the overtime budget. Looks like Tanya gave false testimony. Hashtag perjury, hashtag the Sal Greco Show. So let's watch this video.
Let's go ahead and jump into everybody's favorite subject. I guess we could all create a harmonic chorus here when we say overtime. Let's talk about that. In September, uniformed agencies were informed that they needed to provide overtime reduction targets and to develop spending plans in order to achieve these targets. Yet in the preliminary plan, $249 million was added to NYPD's overtime budget in the current fiscal year. This is a 48% increase in the NYPD's overtime budget since adoption. What was NYPD's overtime reduction target, and what was the plan to reduce overtime spending and hit the target?
Good morning. Commissioner Cabana and I cannot stress enough how important it is to keep a close eye on overtime. As the first deputy commissioner, it's my responsibility to make sure that we're managing the overtime properly and streamlining operations to use our resources wisely. But let's be clear, a lot of overtime costs are due to unforeseen circumstances such as shootings and protests. But however, we added additional layers to that. My office conducts biweekly bureau meetings with each bureau head to discuss any overtime misuse or to make sure that we're keeping the overtime intact. In addition to that, we have a biweekly variance report. What is a biweekly variance report, right? We want to know it's a report that each bureau head that reports to the office about any identification of misuse of overtime. There was extreme success with that. For the 2024 fiscal year, we've seen a decrease in operational overtime by 13% and a decrease in arrest overtime by 4%. And with me is the Assistant Commissioner of Management and Budget, Seth Serino, and he'll go further into the question.
So here's more on Christmas. NYPD breaking news. Allegedly, an anonymous note was left on Lieutenant Epps' desk stating that a female officer felt very uncomfortable with, at that time, Chief of Patrol Jeffrey Madry texting and calling said female officer while working in the NYPD CRT unit. Madry had the female officer transferred to a Patrolboro Brooklyn North Detective Squad to protect himself. I look forward to reading about this disturbing predatory behavior by the, quote, Dream Team, end quote, a.k.a., quote, Gotham Brothers, end quote, which somehow was allowed to occur and continue under multiple police commissioners and New York City's first indicted mayor. Hashtag The Sal Greco Show. So these posts that were posted on Christmas by myself, it's all exclusive inside baseball, as we like to call it. And it's basically a punch in the mouth to the New York City Police Department with all the incoming legal litigation that is unfolding with Lieutenant Epps, the New York City Police Department, and all the people involved in cover-ups and scandals. And I find it funny, this part about the first Deputy Commissioner, Tanya Kinsella, who said there's a bi-weekly meeting about overtime, and you came to learn now through the post I put up and some of the knowledge I am now sharing with all of you that this is a massive cover-up and a total scandal and just a fleecing of taxpayers. It's so much more than what was salaciously written originally by the New York Post in the very first article in regards to Lieutenant Epps. Well, at this point, there's a lot of people making their own minds up about her. She stole. She's a victim. She's taken advantage of. Right now, in my opinion, if you want to say that she's a main witness against the corrupt leadership of the New York City Police Department, and you give her immunity for whatever you think she may or may not have done, because from what I understand, the New York City Police Department, I was an employee, I was a cop for 14 years there. You don't sign your own overtime slips. It's your supervisor who gives you the authorization for that. So where is there any accountability here? Because it seems that it's Jeffrey Madry and maybe his inspector, their deputy inspector, the captain that are running the chief of department's office that are authorizing Lieutenant Epps to do whatever it is that she was doing, whether it be transfers, whether it be overtime. And of course, who's in charge of that? Tanya Kinsella, first deputy commissioner. And it seems as if she just perjured herself when she went to city council. By the way, where's former police commissioner Eddie Caban? Isn't he wrapped up in this also? He was the first deputy commissioner when Jeffrey Madry was the chief of patrol. So again, there's a liaison here. You could kind of draw a picture of this puzzle, and it's very alarming. But there was more posts by myself. Let's put them up on the screen. So this is the day after Christmas. Breaking news. NYPD Lieutenant Epps attorney Eric Sanders Esquire has filed a FOIA request for budget projections, overtime records, and related materials, fiscal years 2019 to present, with the New York City Mayor, New York City City Council, and NYPD. If they are denied, they will file an Article 78. And you can see that here's the FOIA request. This is obviously to Mayor Eric Adams. You see that he's asking for testimony, related materials, oversight investigations, additional specifications. And then, of course, it's also CC to the Office of Management and Budget, the Comptroller Office, and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, which would be Luis Molina, and wouldn't expect much coming out of that guy. So this is the FOIA request for budget projections, overtime records, and related materials, fiscal years 2019 to present, for New York City Council from Eric Sanders Esquire. And here they are. And you can see he's asking City Council for the budget projections. He's asking City Council for the budget projections, testimony and transcripts, supporting materials, additional specifications, all the good stuff. And then this is the FOIA request for budget projections, overtime records, and related materials, fiscal years 2019 to present, for the NYPD from Eric Sanders Esquire. And here it is. This is the FOIA request to the New York City Police Department. Payroll dates and overtime records. Overtime policy, audit controls, budget projections, sexual harassment complaints, overtime abuse for investigations, whatever those investigations are, the overtime abuse investigations. Additional specification, free waiver or cost estimates, request for time and response. And there you have it. This is a FOIA request, and we'll see where this lands, because obviously if they fight it, I could guarantee you Eric Sanders will be filing the Article 78 for each individual entity that he FOIA requested this material for, and two, and they'll just duke it out in the courts. So the morning of December 26th, which happens to be the day after Christmas, here is Eric Sanders, the attorney for Lieutenant Epps, firing off basically a torpedo. The torpedo is a FOIA request. That FOIA request will now need to be dealt with by New York City Council, the New York City Police Department, and of course the New York City Mayor and the other officers that were CC'd there. The problem here is more than likely they're going to deny it. They've denied plenty of FOIA requests, including my own. So that's going to become an Article 78, which is a lawsuit, and that'll probably be dragged out in court. I don't know for how long. I don't expect for too long, because also there are criminal implications here. So wink, wink. Anybody in the Southern District of New York or Manhattan DA office, you should look into this. So, wait, there was more. So let me show you this post and what's going on with, we'll call him the fixer of Jeffrey Maddrey. Okay, so here's the saga of Kyle M. Calenda. Who is Kyle M. Calenda? He's better known as the fixer. He's the fixer for Jeffrey Maddrey and the, how do we best describe this? The Sofrito network / crew. So, breaking news on Friday, December 20th, 2024, after 1,700 hours, and Saturday, December 21st, 2024, NYPD Detective Kyle M. Calenda, shield number 21, tax registry number 963426, was allegedly seen removing, quote, items, end quote, from former Chief of Department Jeffrey B. Maddrey's office while being parked on the SC level. Did the NYPD tell the Southern District of New York or Manhattan DA investigators about the removals? After all, the investigators were there last Friday into this week. If I was heading this investigation, I would ask the investigators to check One Police Plaza headquarters security's cameras system and ask all parties involved about this action that allegedly took place. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Exclusive. NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry's office was accessible only through a secured pass, utilized by an exclusive list of authorized employees only. How did Detective Calanda obtain access? Who authorized it when the office should have been sealed as a crime scene? Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Kyle M. Calanda will be known as the Fixer. So here's a post by Marlon Bethel at Fire Detective. You should follow him if you do have X. He puts, this kid followed Madry into 1PP in 2020, doubled his overtime from there, then onward and got a gold shield out of it a year later. It doesn't get any more obvious than nepotism and cronyism running rampant in the NYPD news than this. And then in another post he had, because he was now quote posting this, nice try, but this kid's OT picked up considerably since 2021 when Eric Adams became mayor and Jeffrey Madry apparently began running 1PP behind the scenes, including during Sewell's tenure. Here is this Fixer's overtime. I'd like to point out, look at the overtime hours he is doing. In 2017, he has 8 hours. In 2018, it's 133 hours. In 2019, it's 363 hours. In 2020, it's 700 hours. In 2021, this is when he goes from where he's at to the chief of department's office. And look at this, 662 hours in 2021. 2022, 817 hours. In 2023, 915 hours. And up to date on this year, 800 hours. All right? So his total overtime he made has bumped up significantly in all his time on the job. And then he has $87,000 in the total amount that he's made in total overtime. I mean, you know, I don't know what to say there. That is absolutely insane. And by the way, his record, he has about 20 to 25. He has about 20 to 25 career arrests. We have Kyle, we'll call him Kyle the Fixer or the Fixer. And this is the mop-up man for Jeffrey Madry and the Consofrito crew, we'll call them, or the Consofrito network, which is Madry, Caban, Eric Adams, Philip Banks, Tim Pearson, Tariq Shepard, Kaz Dordry, all your frequenters of your favorite now shuttered nightclub. And also, apparently, they were having a nightclub in One Police Plaza. And this guy somehow snuck into One Police Plaza, or was he let in? We don't know. And he has access, unfeathered access to this office, and he's removing items. Where was this cleared by any investigator? Did the police commissioner know about this, or did they authorize this? This is a fiasco, folks, but we know also by looking at things, the Fixer, 800 hours of overtime and then 900 hours of overtime. There's other people on this job that when they put in an overtime slip for 1 hour, and that could be for any various thing, whether it be for time or cash or scrutinized as if they had just stolen money from a bank. Here, we have someone who has unfettered access to overtime. How is that? That needs to be investigated. But wait, there was more. So let's put this up on the screen. Meet Michael H. Devonish. He works in the police department, chief of department office. Okay? This NYPD officer pled guilty to criminal association, not only kept his job, but rewarded by being transferred to the chief of department office under Jeffrey Madry. The NYPD claimed I criminally associated with my friend Roger Stone while supporting President Trump and was terminated for that. What is this about at NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch? Hashtag double standard. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Now, I personally don't know Michael H. Devonish. You see this case right here? Improperly used department property, violated uniform rules, armed without a shield, attended unlicensed location, off-duty employment without permission, criminal association, impeded an investigation, made misleading statements during an official department interview, violated Department of Motor Vehicle rules, made computer inquiries unrelated to official department business, improperly intervened. He pled guilty to all these charges. That was an internal charge, by internal affairs. His penalty, dismissal probation, 12 months, pretrial suspension days, 31 days, suspended without pay, 29 days, and a total loss of 20 days vacation. This was in March 16th, 2021. And of course, this was around the time that I was still being investigated and being treated as if I was Juan Pablo Escobar or Roy DeMeo. And I had obviously committed the crime of the century, being friends with Roger Stone and being a Trump supporter, because every question in my investigation was about Trump, about Roger, and about being security, which I never was. But somehow I get terminated. This officer is rewarded. Here's a post by Eric Dim at Eric Dim Cop. If you've watched the Sal Greco Show, you know Eric Dim is the co-host of the Finest Unfiltered podcast. And he quotes this in regards to my post about the officer who somehow criminally associated with somebody and gets rewarded. He writes, was he vaccinated? At John D. McCarry. Hashtag the Finest Unfiltered. But there was more, because Eric Dim also questioned another person here. Here's Eric Dim again. Kyle, I was a special assignment lieutenant working overtime with boots to the ground, and I was exhausted and made less than $250K. How did you do it? Hashtag the Finest Unfiltered. And there's the post in regards to Kyle M. Kalenda, a.k.a. The Fixer. And here's another post by Eric Dim. And he's, quote, posting for Marlon Bethel at Fire Detective. So Eric Dim here says, just curious, did this name come up at the bi-weekly meetings at NYPD First Dep? Hashtag the Finest Unfiltered. And in the original post that he, quote, posted was Marlon Bethel saying, very curious, what exactly did he do to earn 800 hours in OT at Chief of Department's office? It certainly wasn't from arresting anyone. Here is, from See-Through New York, the total amount of overtime right here. 800 hours. He had a bump from 140,000 to 250,000 almost. And career-wise, as of what, right now? He was appointed in 4/12/2017. He got to the Chief of Department's office 12/8/2022, which was right around when Madry got there. Total amount of arrests, 31. He has 31 arrests. He has 800 hours in overtime. 31 career arrests, 800 hours in overtime in 1 year. I don't know what to say. It's wow. How can it be that two officers or two employees from the same organization could possibly be treated differently. One seems to have egregious behavior. The other, well, just don't like you. But you both committed the same act, apparently, which was associating with someone who's reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity. One gets terminated. The other one loses a few vacation days, but then gets rewarded to go to the chief of department's office where they are cashing in, making a boatload of money, while the other has been, basically dragged through the mud and left to die as a leper. And nobody sees anything wrong with this. I think very soon in my own litigation, this entire new information will be coming forward because this is disgraceful. Along with the money this person made, despite the fact they should have been terminated. And that's the world of Eric Adams. But there is even more. And here's a post regarding a fresh set of transfers by the New York City Police Department by John D. Macari. The NYPD's Internal Bureau Special Investigations Unit, Group 1, needs an entire overhaul. Not sure what this round of transfers is in regard to, but whatever the reason, it doesn't begin to restore trust to the Bureau that is in charge of upholding the integrity of the NYPD. And I see here there's 10 transfers. There's lieutenants, detectives, sergeants, and they're all going to different precincts. 114th precinct, 116, 106. Man, oh boy. As John Macari posted and stated, I don't know if this is how they're going to start changing their internal affairs bureau in the New York City Police Department, but 10 people transferred, you need a complete overhaul. Forget about 10 people. That bureau is so corrupt that all they do is cover up for the people in charge. That's been going on for a long time. Folks, we're headed into something that's going to be kind of like what the Mullen Commission was and the Knapp Commission. Every 40, I guess every 20 years it's happened. We're about 10 to 15, maybe 20 years overdue. So expect something rather large to be coming shortly in regards to a commission or an investigative body that is going to look into everything that's happened here. A lot of stuff that's been discussed on this show, things that have unfolded in the last few days, and the fact that this seems to be the most corrupt administration in the history of New York City in regards to a mayor, in regards to the police department. This stinks. And the victim here, the biggest one, always seems to be the New York City taxpayer. And we're going to leave on this note. I'd like to read off this article in regards to the guy who is the driving force behind all the latest mishigas in the NYPD, former NYPD Chief of Department, Jeffrey Maddrey. Ex-NYPD top cop Jeffrey Maddrey kicked out by wife after tawdry sex for OT scandal expose, sources. This is by Tina Moore and Jorge Fitzgibbon of the New York Post. He's been demoted. Recently ousted NYPD Chief of Department Jeffrey Maddrey was kicked out of his Queens home by his enraged wife following a post-expose that linked him to a sleazy sex for OT scandal involving a high-ranking aide in the department, law enforcement sources said. Maddrey, 53, the highest-ranking uniformed cop at the NYPD until his abrupt fall from grace last week, left his two-story Brookville home lugging two suitcases shortly after the explosive December 21st report and is now shacking up with kin in Georgia, the sources said. The veteran cop, who rose through the ranks of New York's finest and was appointed chief by Mayor Eric Adams in 2022, was pressured to quit after the scandal broke. The Post exclusive revealed that NYPD Lieutenant Quetisha Epps filed a complaint accusing Maddrey of an ongoing campaign of sexual extortion in exchange for perks and overtime duty. Epps said the chief took advantage of her financial vulnerability, including a fear that she would lose her home to foreclosure, to strong-arm her into a sex for perks relationship starting in June 2023. Quote, I think he's a predator, she said. He'd say, we're going to save your house, like you're supporting me when you're really just effing me, end quote. Epps, 51, said Madry also forced her to do odd favors for other female cops, according to the Equal Employment Opportunity complaint filed by her attorney, Eric Sanders. Sources said word of the alleged scandal infuriated new NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch, who has taken an axe to the department since taking over to cut useless spending and put more cops on the street. Tisch, only the second woman to lead 36,000-member police force, has orchestrated a shakeup at one police plaza, including booting the head of internal affairs, stripping brass of pricey drivers and security details, and transferring a loose-lipped spokesperson who called a Post reporter a, quote, effing scumbag, end quote. Those moves and Madry's forced resignation are part of the Harvard-educated commissioner's moves to remake what critics called the department's, quote, frat house, end quote, culture. Meanwhile, Madry has denied Epps' allegations. No one answered the door at the Madry home this week, and voice messages left for both the ex-chief and his estranged wife by the Post were not returned. And now it's almost sad to see the wife of the former chief of department throwing out Jeffrey Madry out of his own home, where he's leaving like a lost puppy dog to go find a new home after he basically wet the bed, so to speak. I'm not one to like to air someone's personal dirty laundry, but in this aspect here, this man is a predator. The people surrounding him might be potentially even worse. This cover-up, this scandal has no ends, and I expect a plethora of news to come forward regarding all of this and more. This may be the biggest corruption scandal in the history of not only the New York City Police Department, but New York City in general. When you look around you in New York City and you say to yourself, I don't feel safe, and you have people like the now chief of department, John Schell, who at the time was the chief of patrol, saying, you know, they want to control the narrative. Kaz Dodry saying the same thing, the deputy commissioner of operations, he himself, who has a litany of people in his office that apparently were doing the same thing with overtime. Eric Adams, who says it's the perception. Ed Caban, who was the former police commissioner, saying the same thing. Didn't speak too much, Eddie. He's too busy partying to the break of dawn. But Eddie did say there's a perception that people don't feel safe. It's because they don't. And while this is going on, the leadership of their police department, who always seems to punish the hardworking men and women of that department, is too busy trying to cover up their own misdeeds to care for the safety of New York City citizens. So with that, folks, if you like what you just saw, if you like what you heard, please, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're on Rumble, hit the Rumble button, hit the follow button. And if you're listening on any major platforms that provide podcasts, streaming them, please give it a like, give it a follow. We're going to see where this road leads. This is unbelievable, and it almost breaks your heart, but for a guy like me, I was expecting this from when I found out about their adventures of the nightlife and all of what came after that. My, oh my. And with that, I will see you soon. This is a developing story. It's been one for, I don't know, a couple of years now. And all I could say is I pray for the men and women of the New York City Police Department, those guys that work hard, those women that work hard, and you feel that you're ignored or you feel that you're stepped on. Trust me, this show is a huge advocate for you, and everything this show does is to try to help you and the taxpayers, who are the true victims in all of this. And as much as there's a lot going on in the entire world, as New York City goes, so does the country. Remember, it's the shiny city on that hill that somehow lost its luster thanks to, first, the former mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, and now Eric Adams. And with that, I say good morning, good afternoon, and good night.